Welcome back to this episode of Paint Society. Now in this episode, we're gonna go over one of the most important elements of any paint job, and that is the pressure of your spray gun. And thanks for joining me on this episode. Now we're gonna go over one of the biggest questions I always get in the comments and in my DMs. That is, Brian, what pressure do you spray your base, your clear coat, your sealer at? And would you believe me that the pressure number really doesn't matter? In fact, that's right, and we're going to be using this beautiful MDX 3-stage to go over sealer, base, and clear coat. We're going to use a variety of different spray guns and tell you and show you why different spray guns operate at different pressures and why lower pressures are a little bit better to spray at than those higher pressures we used to spray at back in the day. And on this job, we have a new fender, blend the door, and of course blend the hood. But any car that's older than 5 or 6 years, guys, there's just no blending of the hood, and I just cannot blend over chips. So I'm taking myself and I'm gonna do the whole entire hood for the customer. That's something I'm doing on my own, and just gonna take it into the fender because I'm also doing the bumper. These are some things that you'll just end up having to do in the paint world because I care about my dealership. I care about every customer, every car that I paint, and I want everything to come out as good as I can. Within reason, I can fix some chips. It's only gonna take me about a good 20 more minutes to sand it down, reprime it, and seal it. And then in the end, what do I have? I have a beautiful car. When a customer comes to pick up the car, they don't have a beautiful repair here and then a whole bunch of rock chips that were painted over. So have that conversation with the customer. If they still don't wanna do it, then you can decide what you wanna do from there. On this actual vehicle, I'm just gonna go ahead and do it myself. It's just easier that way. We're ready to start spraying. Now, like any video, we're always gonna give you tips and tricks along the way other than what the title of the video is. So we have our sealer coat. Now, one thing, it is getting very, very hot. So I picked up some slow. Okay, I realized that we were using just the normal activator or hardener and it was just really drying up too much at that edge. So the slow is really gonna help it. The slow for our sealer is right here. Again, this is the reducer that is normal. So you wanna use slow if it's over 80 or 85, I would tell you, to be honest. So, and then we have our blending additive. And now blending additive is very simple. They make it in many different brands. This is a Sickens. This one particularly just pours out of the bottle and you spray it. So we'll put this over all of the edges of our sealer, and it cannot be confused with melt away reducer, okay? They're different, all right? So this is more for if you're doing a burn-in or something spottish, something small, all right? I would tell you that this trick using the blending additive, it just works way better. Now for this particular gun, the reason why I love it, although it's a little bit slower, it operates at a very low pressure. So you cannot spray 14, 15 PSI on any other spray gun other than a DV1. So basically we're gonna have it, or it's around 15 PSI. This is all the way open, and this is set at wide open as well. So from this point, we're gonna seal it. And remember, the reason why we're sealing is because on red, we want the same exact undercoat. If we don't have the same exact undercoat on our panels, adjacent panels, it's just not gonna match. So this is a dark sealer that I mixed up. It's also gonna help out with the covering of the base coat. This is a complex paint job, a lot of layers. Let's go ahead and get started. And I'm not gonna wait to go around the whole entire hood. Let me get it now. Right around 20 PSI on this one, 21. Now that that area is all set, we have free range to go over our whole hood. Now we'll hit up this area. Let's take a look at what we have accomplished here. So Brian, why didn't you take the sealer all the way to the edge? Yes, that is a good idea, but we have a lot of layers here. You're gonna see in the following coats, we're gonna have a base, and then we have to have a mid coat and then clear coat. And we don't want to push that sealer edge too far because we're going to have to end up covering it. This is a blend panel. Let's keep it a blend panel. Why did you put sealer there? Well, we're painting the bumper. Remember, same undercoat. If you have the same undercoat over all of your paint and all the adjacent matching up panels that you're painting, this is all gonna match. But again, pressure. How do we know to determine, was it too high? Was it too low? Sometimes as professionals, all we need to do is listen to it, but as a rookie or someone new to painting, that might be a little bit difficult. So let's use our visual aids. And this is the best visual aid here. Look at those droplets. Do you see how fine they are? The droplet size in some to most cases will determine if your pressure is too high or too low. If we have a droplet size that is much fatter, thicker, then that means that your pressure is not high enough. That means that too much paint is coming out of the gun and it's not allowing it to break up before it hits the panel. Now, if we come over here to our blending area, once again, if we have too fine or too dry spray, we want to lower the pressure and we want to open up the fluid just a little bit. We can see here that this is a very fine transition, very smooth. And by using that blending additive over this edge, this is completely smooth, and also using the slow sealer activators and reducers. This is still flashing off, but flashing off nicely. And I'll quickly show you how to make those adjustments. But first, do you hear the absence of the background? This is noise cancellation on these microphones. And I want to know, do you like the noise cancellation or do you prefer the background noise? Yes, you can hear my voice just a little bit better, but it does take away some of the fullness of my voice. So let me know in the comments what you think. Once again, this is with noise cancellation. You'll be able to hear me much better. However, this is without noise cancellation. I think I might prefer some of that background noise, but it's up to you, the subscribers and followers, to let me know how you feel in the comments. But for now, let's go back to noise cancellation and talk about some of these gun settings. So again, let's say that your pressure is too low because those droplets are too big. Well, you can come here and on any particular gun, this is a digital version, all I want you to do when you higher pressure is do it in increments of about 2. I don't want you to higher pressure no more than increments of 2. This way we can fine tune and see what we're doing. Remember, when we're sending more air to the gun body through the throttle, what's happening is we're going to be breaking up the paint finer. But of course your distance is important too. So let's say you're at this distance and it's dry. Well, that could be not too much pressure, but too far of a distance. So there's a lot of different elements that go into it. So first I want you to close your distance right around here. Now as a good baseline, on most spray guns, I want you to start around 23 PSI. Again, on this one, it's much lower, 14 to 15 PSI, and there's no other spray guns that I've seen operate that low. Now again, if you're not getting too much fluid out, you think it's too dry, go ahead to your actual fluid control knob, and I only want you to do half turns. So on most guns, there's a dial like there is here. You're gonna do a half turn, and what that's gonna do is allow more paint to come out of the gun cup through the body and onto the panel. If you had it turned in too much, what would end up happening is less paint's gonna travel through the gun body, more air. It's gonna over-atomize the paint, it's gonna come out dry. So hopefully that helps decide what pressure is gonna be best for you. Now we're ready for base coat, so let's jump into that. We're gonna use a different gun. For sealer, it's all dry. It's about 15 minutes, it's pushing around 90 degrees in a paint booth at 8 a.m. So we're using extra slow on everything because we want that edge to really be smooth. Now, it's gonna be hard to see the edge on a metallic or your base coat, but you want your paint to lay smooth. Remember, if sealer is not smooth, if base coat is not smooth, what follows? Clear coat. A lot of you guys, you're spraying beautiful finishes and you're coming back the next day and you're wondering why it looks so crappy or dull and shrunk back. It's shrinking into what you put on there. So think about it like this, a puddle of water, right? When it hits the ground, it looks super smooth, right? But the next day it evaporates into the asphalt and then you only see just a little bit of water on the top. It's like it's soaked into it almost, right? Well, that's the same concept here. You can float on your clear coat and make it look good and you're gonna think you're the best, right? You think, oh, this came out great. And then the next day, what's gonna happen, if you don't have smooth layers, it's gonna sink and shrink all back into the valleys and all the low spots of your base coat or your sealer. So make sure that these layers, they're just as important as clear coat. Now, where we're going to be with this Motivated Painters Wall-Com, well, around 23 PSI, I said that's where you guys kind of want to be when you're starting with your base coats. And then, remember, what are we going to adjust that? 2. Up 2, down 2. Then you can go from there if you need a little bit more. Now, right here, we got to be careful. Although this is a somewhat big door, we're going to lose real estate really quick with this blend. So we just want to cover the edges here. Okay, so we're going to start here by getting coverage on the edge, on all of our edges, and then we'll come back and we'll fill in all the other coats. All right, so we got our coverage there, and then we're going to go over to our other side. And this is kind of somewhat of a reverse blend, Paint Society blend, something I do to get coverage. And now we're going to get coverage here, and at the edges was our sealer first. And when I'm here, gun control. I'm not full trigger, just a little bit. I don't want to get overspray all the way over here. All I want to do is just get a little bit of color to cover up that edge. Gun control. That's the name of the game here. And over here, since it's a small spot, we can do the whole thing. And we don't want to fan too much into the fender because remember, this is all valuable real estate. We need to cover this with our mid coat. Now throughout the video, I'm really going to give you a lot of different examples of noise cancellation without noise cancellation. So this is without noise cancellation. I really, guys, want to get a good answer from you all because when I move forward, I want to go one way or the other. So we're going to go ahead and put it on here. We're going to put it on wet. We want it to smooth out. Your hood needs to go on wet. So what are we going to do for that? Well, you can do a couple things to make sure it goes on wet. We can first, remember, we want to get our pressure here, so we hold it halfway. Okay, on this particular gun, it adjusts here. We're going to go down a little bit. I want it right around 20 PSI. And that 1 pound will make a difference. Also, what will make a difference, I get a little bit closer. If I put it on a lot wetter, it's going to dry a lot smoother. You can see how wet it goes on, right? This is good. When it dries, it's going to be smooth. Paying for good paint here. This is Sikkens Auto Base, right? We don't need to put more paint on than what needs. We're going to put 2 coats on. This thing will be covered since we have a nice sealer coat. And if we look over here, we didn't have to go further than where we originally put our base, all right? Let's let this flash. We'll put 1 more coat, and then we'll go into our mid coat. Now that bumper is all based up. Now, as I was spraying, I did notice something. Yep, this is reality of painting, guys. This is gonna happen. The hose, it hit the top of the hood. Now, I'm wearing my new paint suit that I actually fit into, which is really refreshing because I'm not using my lab coat. Sometimes a lab coat, when you use it, the edges of it, it will hit, okay? So I was actually happy about that. My actual Paint Society Colad ones, I had to order another one because I spilled clear coat all over it. But this is a cool one by Segola. And again, it fits, so I'm wearing it. It's tight in the belly, so you don't have that overlap onto the actual hood itself. And I've done that before, but yep, this is what just happened, guys. So here's what we do. We let this dry, and we can simply fix this. And as I was looking too, I got a small piece of what seems to be a little bit of lint that is right in this area. So we'll let this dry. I know what's going on super smooth, and I'll show you how to fix that up real quick. The worst thing you can do is try to fix it before it's ready to be fixed, and let it dry for a little bit, and then we'll attack that. All right, so we're back here. It's dried. Now, this is what you guys need to get. If you don't have this, you are at a big advantage. This is the Sky Pad by Eagle Abrasives. It's a K600 with a hand pad, and this is what you use for defects in your base. Now, when you've got something like this, you don't really need any water. You can use a little bit, but you don't need to. If you want to get it nice and smooth, it will do the cutting by itself. And all you gotta do is just go over it lightly. Remember that you created this defect in the base, so it's not below the base, it's just at the top. So we don't need a whole lot, okay? So just like that, we'll leave it there. And then this guy over here, if you happen to spot it, just go ahead and those will come right out. That's just a little piece of lint. So what do you do after that? You just get yourself a tack rag and give it a once over, and you can do the whole entire hood as well. I don't like to tack too much, but on a hood, it's not a bad idea. And see how smooth this is? We've got sealer and base over this, and it's smooth, so that is a really good way to determine that, one, you don't need to sand the base, and two, it's gonna be a nice paint job. And from there, we'll pick up our gun and just a little bit of a spray, just to get coverage. And then this guy over here, just a little bit of a spray. Now you can dry it a little bit by holding the gun halfway. We wanna get a little bit more coverage here, so when we do our final coat here in just a moment, we can go over this only one time. And it's weird, as soon as you break the sealer, film of the sealer, it doesn't cover the same exact way as you did in the first coat. So a couple coats should be fine. And let that dry, blow dry that a little bit. Now on hotter days, I always lower my pressure just a little bit, because remember that the actual panel is hotter, the atmosphere is hotter, so what's gonna happen when the air comes out is gonna be a lot hotter and it's gonna dry quicker. So if we lower the pressure, remember we're sending less air to the actual paint itself, and it's not gonna break it up with more air than it needs. So what's gonna happen, it's gonna be wetter, all right? More air, it's gonna be drier. The right combination, the right pressure, that's up to you to determine what it's gonna be. Now I'm going to show you something, guys. They don't train you on how to do this. Now first off, this is the bloody red transparent mid coat, and this doesn't cover at all. You'd be like 7 or 8 coats trying to get it to cover. It never covers. So what you got to do is, again, this is the old formula, you got to double up your toners. And I like using it in the mid coat because you can let it dry, you can nib something out if you need, you can go back if you need to. It's a lot more forgiving than using it in the clear coat. So anyways, they're not going to teach you how to do this, guys. This is the original paint we just put down. This is the base metallic. This doesn't have any metallic in it. So in order to get those edges to really go away, we got to chase the tail. And by chasing the tail, what that means is we got to chase the edge of the blend. So we've got, give or take, maybe like 3 ounces in there. We're just about going to double it up. Not a perfect match here or perfect science of ratios, but just a little bit of both. And what we're gonna do with that is we're gonna put this over our tail first on all of our edges, and we're gonna start to chase the tail and get this to start to blend in. Now this is gonna be on a final exam, so you really wanna listen to this because it's gonna help you out if you're painting one of these. So basically, this is the hardest spot to cover up, because what painters will do is keep coming and stopping at this edge, and you're going to accumulate a dark spot of mid coat here. So we're not full mid coat yet. We've got a mix of the base and the mid, and pressure is going to be in or around the same thing. Now I'm going to start to try to get this to fade out a little bit. Now you'll notice that obviously the base is going to be just a little bit redder. So let's go. Okay, and then we're going to come over to our other edge. And after that quick coat, you can see overall the car is a little bit redder. And it's not too much redder, but the body of the base coat holds the transparent a little bit better, so it helps it cover a little bit better. So now we can probably get out of this in 3 coats of mid, opposed to like maybe 5. And remember, the more layers of paint you add onto it, it's inevitable, guys, it's gonna start to build up and get a little bit rough if you're not using the correct pressure and the correct reducers. For us, we're using everything what we should be doing, and it's still looking good, it's still smooth, but you're gonna have some instances where, you know, you might have to go back and lightly sand it, but if you're gonna have to sand it, remember, you're always gonna have to reapply that base, and then you get yourself into a situation where it's really tough to recover from. So we're gonna allow this to flash 5 minutes, and then we're gonna come heat it up. We're gonna chase the tail first. Remember, we wanna get the edge of this tail. Look at, we have a nice transition, but it's moving quick. You can see that we just spray here, but your overspray always carries. So exhaust is in the front. It's not carrying my overspray across the door. Can you imagine if my overspray got carried across the door because the exhaust was in the back? Know your booth, know how to set up the car in the booth. It's gonna make a huge difference when it comes to painting and getting that paint to stay where you want it to instead of carrying over. All right, so we're ready, and the gun has to have been completely cleaned out. You can't have any remnants from the first original coat, the metallic, because then if you did, it's gonna start to carry on. You're not gonna be able to cover them up. So we're gonna chase the tail here first on both sides, and then we'll start to bring it in and close the gap. Now you can see here I dropped my pressure. It's about 19 PSI, and that's because I want a wetter coat, a wetter droplet to cover this. I don't want air drying it up. So chase the edge first. The edge stops right around here. Identify where the edge stops, because if you don't, later on after you clear it, you're gonna have little sparklies past your blend area. So let's go ahead and first get this covered. And once we get this area covered, we won't have to come this far into the door again. Like I said, it's kind of like a reverse blend. We want to get our bases covered first. That way we can work inwards towards the front of the vehicle. And I'm just, again, doing that fender on the house because I want to make sure that everything matches. And you see how we can really keep it away from the edge of the door here. We want to keep it away from this area, because believe it or not, the overspray will carry here, and that fender will be darker than that A-pillar. So let's allow this just to kind of kick for a little bit, and then we'll go over the middle of the hood, and again, pressure a little bit lower. Remember, there's always gonna be a different pressure for whatever you're spraying, and as a professional painter, that is the tips I'm going to give you as you're spraying. Whether you're professional or do-it-yourselfer, you can always benefit from my tips or anyone else's tips that they give you. There's gonna be a lot of different ways to do things. Take what tips you can and learn from them and apply them to yourself and see what works for you. Every painter is gonna be just a little bit different. These are things that work for me. Now, once again, once that has flashed off, about a good 5 minutes, now I can start to do my blending into the first part of the door where a lot of that metallic is, and then across the whole entire hood. And after 3 coats of mid, it finally covered, and we're checking it here with the Astro light. It's a cheap and inexpensive light, and what you really want to look for, guys, here is coverage. And coverage in the areas you wouldn't expect to see, because guess what? If you don't have proper coverage, it's gonna look orange. The silver metallic and poor coverage of the mid reflect an orange tone. And we want this to look red. Customer doesn't want to get his car back and it looks orange. How about that blend? I've got about 45 minutes worth of more work that I did just to clear up this hood with chips and blend that fender, scuff it down. So now I can ensure that everything's gonna match. Now, as that dries, we're gonna talk about clear coat. Now, this is a third different gun, and I'm using different guns because I wanna show you guys that all guns will have different variations of pressure. And remember, the whole purpose is to find the perfect pressure, right? So I was telling you before that experienced painters, sometimes we just listen or we just know by what's coming out of the spray gun, but that's difficult for a beginner. So again, a lot of the newer spray guns, they're operating at lower pressure because we want less overspray and they want more paint to the panel rather than in the air. Okay, so that's a savings material, and that's actually a better, nicer finish rather than just being in the air. It's actually going to the panel, which is what we call transfer efficiency. And a lot of guns nowadays are operating at a lower PSI and have proper transfer efficiency. So if you have a newer gun style, I would tell you start around 23, 24 PSI, make those changes here or there. Now, these are the main 3 settings on your paint gun. You've got fan control, which really doesn't change except for on the Iwata Series 2. The only complaint I would really have about this spray gun is just this wide fan. That's not really necessary at full fan. So I always take this guy and I'll turn it in about 1 full turn. Now on my fluid here, I'll back it almost all the way out, hold the trigger, turn it back clockwise, and when it stops, it's at wide open. So keep this here. This, if you turn it more in, it's gonna bump your pressure up actually. So as you turn it more counterclockwise, it's gonna lower your pressure. So the fan and the pressure actually work hand in hand. The fluid is independent of itself. So if you're getting more dry spray, you can also slow down, get closer, or open this up a little bit and drop the pressure, again, increments of around 2. We're ready for clear coat. You really wanna look at what the clear coat's doing in order to adjust the proper pressure. Ah, that came out nice. Now, I taped it up the night before and I came here early in the morning because it's been so brutally hot here in the summer. We're pushing around 95 to 100 degrees in the paint booth. So I try to get around 80 degrees in the morning. And even with extra slow, man, it was worth it. Now, let me tell you, pressure will always change. So let's say you dial in a pressure, right, on this particular gun, but it's colder the next day or the next week or the next month, or you're spraying a different material. You always got to look at what the paint is doing. What the paint is doing is going to tell you how to adjust your gun. Remember, there's no magic number PSI, but there is a number that is magical to what the environment is on that particular day. So you got to find the perfect PSI for your atmosphere, your settings, your coatings, and what you're spraying. So I hope that helps you try to understand that no PSI is going to work perfectly for your environment. Also, it's good to have a baseline of where you want to start for each gun. So if you have a question about that, you can always send me a message on Instagram as well. We're gonna go ahead and let this dry. I'm gonna pull it out. I'm gonna show you how beautiful this thing looks like. Guys, don't forget also to tell me in the comments what you think of noise canceling versus non-noise canceling. What do you prefer? This is Brian from Paint Side reminding you, don't overthink it. It's just paint. See you guys on the next episode.